In this lecture, we shall be discussing the 8th unit in the course MGPE 14 pertaining to Gandhi's village, an ideal ecological unit. I'm Dr. Shubhangi Vaidya from the School of Interdisciplinary and Transdisciplinary Studies at IGNOU. The aims and objectives of today's lecture are basically to examine the community life in Gandhi's ashrams in South Africa and India, to discuss the importance of Gram Swaraj or village self-reliance as articulated by Gandhi, and to look at the significance of village industry in sustaining the village and in promoting the idea of Gram Swaraj. Let's begin by talking about Gandhi's very intimate relationship with the villages. For him, the economic and social revival of the 7 lakh villages of India, which were there at the time of his work, was a top priority. And to quote him, "To serve our villages is to establish Swaraj. Everything else is but an idle dream." So you see that Gandhi's preeminent contribution to the idea of freedom, to the idea of Swaraj, was that Swaraj serves not just the elites, but it begins with the villages. And any freedom that does not empower the poorest man or the poorest person in the village is no freedom at all. After his return to India in 1914, Gandhi promised Gopal Krishna Gokhale, who was his political mentor, that for 1 year he would travel the length and breadth of India to understand and gain experience about the country. So you probably all are aware how he traveled third class on India's trains and went into the most remote villages, getting thereby a first-hand knowledge of the social and economic conditions of the villages. This was Gandhi's way of actually exploring the real India, the India which resided in the remote villages and hamlets spread across the vast countryside of this enormous country. His early satyagrahas in Champaran and Kheda in 1917 and 1918 also opened his eyes to the economic exploitation of the villagers by the British. As you all know, centuries of colonial rule had led to the complete breakdown of village economic life, and the miserable and wretched condition of the villages was something that Gandhi experienced firsthand through his travels and through his early satyagrahas. Having witnessed the ills of industrialization in England, he wanted to protect India from following in its footsteps. He wanted the developmental path that India would take to be qualitatively different from the exploitative and violent one that had been adopted by the West. Gandhi set up community ashrams, Phoenix and Tolstoy Farm in South Africa. These were self-sufficient centers where people of different castes, faiths, and nationalities lived harmoniously with each other as well as the environment. So in a sense, his experiments of community living in South Africa were really the precursors, or were really the way in which Gandhi conceptualized and was to later develop his ideas on how the ideal Indian village should be. Community life in these ashrams consisted of manual labor, cooking, agriculture, and crafts. And in a sense, there was a complete equality of people who lived in these ashrams. And dignity of labor, the value that was given to everybody's work, was something that really stood out. And as discussed before, Gandhi wanted to develop the 7 lakh villages of India along these lines into these self-dependent communities, these communities which would sustain themselves and sustain each other, into village republics. Let's talk a little bit about the Phoenix settlement and Tolstoy Farm, Gandhi's first experiments or attempts at building ideal village communities. Gandhi built his ashrams in wastelands adjacent to villages. The aim of these experiments was to bring back a generation gone astray under the onslaught of Western industrial culture, as also to prepare a model for the 7 lakh villages and prove the efficacy of living in harmony with nature and the fruits of bread labor. We're quoting Dr. Sarita Singh, the noted scholar on Gandhi. So these ashrams were in a sense precursors for the Gram Swaraj movement and village industries that Gandhi promoted back home in India. Gandhi was inspired by Ruskin's book, Unto This Last, to quote, that a life of labor, that is, the life of the tiller of the soil and the hands craftsman, is the life worth living. So as you can see, Gandhi laid a great deal of emphasis on the work that was done by one's hands, on the work that was basically devalued in a sense, because the life of the mind, or the work that is the mental work, the work that is done by intellectuals, is always privileged over the work that is done by the manual worker. So Gandhi, in a sense, understood the importance and celebrated the importance of working with one's hands, of working intimately with the soil. He established the Phoenix settlement, 14 miles from Durban in South Africa. Now what he did was, he proposed that the printing press for the publication Indian Opinion should be shifted to this farm, and everyone should labor on this farm, drawing the same monthly allowance of £3, irrespective of colour and nationality, and attending to the work of the press in spare time. However, there was a good deal of resistance because the Phoenix settlement was, in a sense, a wild place. There were snakes, there was a lot of uncut vegetation. This was not a place that people would very easily want to give up their settled lives and just move to. However, despite the obstacles, Gandhi started the Phoenix settlement in the year 1904. One of the inmates of the settlement, Millie Graham Pollack, describes life in the Phoenix settlement as a community life in the miniature. And to quote, Gandhi, as the benevolent patriarch, had no special privilege except to look after everyone else. The house resounded with laughter as the children joined with the parents every morning in the grinding of wheat in a hand mill. The evening meal was a pleasant hour, interspersed with light conversations and serious discussions. So in a sense, Gandhi established this egalitarian community, this community where everybody did work for each other, everybody did manual labor, and where a sense of egalitarianism, a sense of equality, a sense of hearing everybody's voice prevailed in the social life of the community. Now let's talk about Tolstoy Farm, another one of his very, very celebrated experiments, another one of his very, very celebrated attempts at creating community. So in order to sustain the Satyagraha struggle in South Africa, Gandhi set up a cooperative farm to lodge the Satyagrahis. In 2010, he set up the Tolstoy Farm on a 1,100-acre land which was given rent-free to him by Mr. Kallenbach. The 75-odd residents hailed from all parts of India and espoused different religions. So to look at the life in Tolstoy Farm, we see that they were served by a common vegetarian kitchen, and they led an extremely frugal and hard-working life. All of them, including the children, had to do their quota of manual labor, and vocational training was also given to the youngsters. Let's talk now about Gandhi's ashrams in the Indian context, the famous ashrams at Sabarmati and Sevagram. So as we have discussed earlier, the condition of Indian villages at the time was absolutely wretched. They were steeped in poverty, illiteracy, disease. The rural economy, as we know, was exploited and completely destroyed by the colonial rule. And Gandhi knew very well that if the village perished, then India would perish, because India resides in her villages. 80% of the population drew sustenance from the village. Gandhi therefore gave all his attention to this foundational work of resurrecting, or in a sense saving, the villages and bringing true freedom to these villages. His constructive program and its practical implication, village reconstruction, were important steps in this direction. Gandhi first established his Satyagraha ashram in Kochrab, a small village near Ahmedabad, in 1915. But 2 years later, after an outbreak of plague, he shifted this ashram to a place on the banks of the Sabarmati river, the famous Sabarmati ashram that every Indian knows about. From the very outset, the ashram was mainly concerned with the fight against untouchability. And later, in 1933, it was given up for a center for the removal of untouchability, the Harijan Sevak Sangh. Gandhi then decided to settle down in a poor village in Segaon near Wardha in Maharashtra. Later, this place was named as Sevagram. In J.C. Kumarappa, the noted Gandhian's words, Sevagram was the de facto capital of India, which saw many historical happenings during the freedom struggle. Let's have a look at the way in which life played out in Sevagram Ashram. What was an ordinary day like over there? So the day used to begin as early as 4 o'clock in the morning with communal prayers and spinning. Breakfast was served at dawn, lunch at 11 a.m., followed by reading, spinning and meditation. Dinner was served as early as 5 o'clock, after which there were interfaith prayers. So as you can see, it was a very, very simple and frugal kind of a life, a very disciplined life in the ashram. And like the ashrams in South Africa, it was a classless community where everybody engaged in what we call bread labor, spinning, craft work, and attempted to live harmoniously with each other. So in a sense, true equality, equality in work, equality in status, were the principles that were practiced in Gandhi's ashrams. And the people there learned cattle keeping, nature cure, hygiene and sanitation, compost making, eradication of untouchability, which was a very, very important touchstone of Gandhi's work, cropping patterns and irrigation practices. So the notion of practicing what you preached was very, very evident in these Gandhi ashrams. What was Gandhi's ideal village like? To quote him, I would say that if the village perishes, India will perish too. It will be no more India. Her own mission in the world will get lost. This is a particularly relevant statement in the context of today, where rapid urbanization and modernization are in a sense undermining the villages. However, India's villages still are her heart and soul. Without villages, India is not India. Gandhi's travels in rural India, as we know, had made him aware of its grim realities and the appalling standards of living. He very, very forthrightly said, instead of having graceful hamlets dotting the land, we have dung heaps. The approach to many villages is not a refreshing experience. Often, one would like to shut one's eyes and stuff one's nose, such is the surrounding dirt and offending smell. I think this is an experience that many of us would agree with, an experience many of us have shared. Gandhi appealed to the educated city dwellers to return to the villages with a spirit of service and make a beginning by making the village cleaner by their own labor and by removing illiteracy to the best of their ability. According to Gandhi, and I quote, an ideal village will be so constructed as to lend itself to perfect sanitation. It will have cottages with sufficient light and ventilation, built out of a material obtainable within a radius of 5 miles of it. The cottages will have courtyards, enabling householders to plant vegetables for domestic use and to house their cattle. The village lanes and streets will be free of all avoidable dust. It will have wells according to his needs and accessible to all. It will have houses of worship for all, also a common meeting place, a village common for grazing its cattle, a cooperative dairy, primary and secondary schools in which industrial, that is vocational education, will be the central fact, and it will have panchayats for settling disputes. It will produce its own grains, vegetables and fruit and its own khadi. This is roughly my idea of a model village. If we think about this idea of a model village, we actually see how far-sighted, how visionary this was. By conceptualizing the ideal village not just as an economic unit but also as a social unit, a unit where the community needs and care of the residents are taken care of. We also see the great emphasis laid on environment and ecology, where this ideal village would, in a sense, be harmonious with nature rather than in conflict with it. So, this dream of an ideal village continues to be a beacon that we can be guided by and that we can strive and aspire towards. Let's talk now about Gandhi's notion of Gram Swaraj. For Gandhi, freedom in its truest sense was the uplift and Swaraj of the village and its inhabitants. The basic principles of Gram Swaraj articulated by Gandhi were the supremacy of human beings, that is, full employment, body labor, equality, trusteeship, decentralization, Swadeshi, self-sufficiency, cooperation, satyagraha, equality of religions, panchayat raj, and a system of education which he termed as Nai Talim. Let's talk now about these self-sufficient village republics and some of the important aspects that Gandhi emphasized. Firstly, the constructive program of Gandhi, which relied on khadi and village industries. Charkha and the spinning of khadi was promoted by Gandhi to deal with seasonal unemployment, which was endemic in India's agricultural sector, women's employment, and economic and political self-reliance. Gandhi referred to khadi as the sun of the village solar system and the other village industries as the planets supporting the sun in return for the heat and sustenance they derived from it. So as we all know, for Gandhi, khadi was more than a cloth, more than a fabric. It was a way of life. It was symbolic of self-sufficiency. It was symbolic of freedom. The other village industries which he helped promote and develop were dairy farming, hand pounding of rice and corn, soap making, beekeeping, pottery, tanning, handmade paper, ink, handicrafts, and palm gur, to name a few. These ensured not just subsistence, not just a source of income, but they also ensured that the local crafts would not die out or would not be overrun by the wave of industrialization. He strongly advised city dwellers to use and purchase only those articles manufactured by the villagers. And though his aim was complete self-sufficiency, he advised each village to produce more than its own requirements and exchange it with a surplus from neighboring villages. So when Gandhi actually speaks of villages collectively striving for a self-contained system, he actually advocated the need for regional specialization and exchange of goods between regions, because he very well understood that no village can be an island, no village can be completely isolated from the overall economic and social system. The supremacy of human beings, full employment, bread and body labor were also emphasized by Gandhi. According to him, the poor of the world cannot be helped by mass production, only by production of the masses. He was in favor of appropriate technology for rural India, where capital was scarce and labor was in plenty. And he believed that technology ought to cater to increased production in agriculture and rural industry, should not be capital intensive, and should properly utilize manpower so as to solve the problem of unemployment. Everybody should be able to get sufficient work to enable them to feed and clothe themselves and make the two ends meet. And right to livelihood and belief in the dignity of labor were very, very important principles that he endorsed. Equality and trusteeship were also very, very important parts of his scheme. He was a firm believer in economic equality and wanted to bridge the yawning divide between the few wealthy and the teeming masses of poor. He advocated the trusteeship system, in which he wanted the rich to become trustees of their surplus wealth for the good of society, since society was like an extended family, according to him. He also laid a great deal of emphasis on the welfare of women and Dalits. Regarding women, Gandhi said, "Woman is the companion of man, gifted with equal mental capacities. She has the right to participate in the very minutest detail in the activities of man, and she has an equal right of freedom and liberty with him. She is entitled to a supreme place in her own sphere of activity, as man is in his." Self-sufficiency and cooperation were also very, very important aspects. Gandhi wanted every village to be self-sufficient in regard to food, clothing, and other basic necessities. However, after having achieved that, he wanted the people to use their spare time for the service of others. As he explained, man is a social being, and inasmuch he is independent, he is also interdependent. The equality of religions was also an article of faith with Gandhi, who believed that every religion has its full and equal place. We are leaves of a majestic tree whose trunk cannot be shaken off its roots. Thus we see in his earliest ashrams also, every evening it was commonplace for hymns, bhajans and scriptures to be read from the holy books like the Bible, Gita and Quran. And as you know, the communal divides and tensions which ultimately culminated in partition were a source of deep pain and anguish to Gandhi. Panchayat Raj was a very, very important aspect promoted by Gandhi, who was, as we know, very pained to see the way in which village panchayats had declined under the centralized British rule. He outlined a system of governance whereby the village was to be ruled by an assembly of 5 people, elected annually by the villagers themselves. It was the responsibility of the panchayat to ensure the education of all children, sanitation, medical care, cleanliness of wells, and uplift of the so-called untouchables. And he did not propose a pyramidical or a hierarchical social order. Rather, he spoke of oceanic circles where each depended and drew sustenance from the other. Nai Talim, or basic education, also meant not just literacy. Rather, for Gandhi, literacy was just the beginning of education. It was practical and basic education for the 5 H's, namely the hand, head, heart, health, and habit. Education through craft was taught along with importance of health and hygiene, and he imparted advice on healthy diet and strongly advocated the precept, cleanliness is next to godliness. So much that we speak today about education being holistic in nature, education emphasizing development of skills, education basically focusing upon the integration of mind, body, and soul. These were all very, very important aspects which had already been discussed and already been developed by Gandhi in his scheme of Nai Talim. To conclude, we can say that Gandhi's village was to be a self-governing, autonomous community. He considered it necessary that it should be self-sufficient in its basic needs like food, clothing, and shelter. Further, Gandhi's village was not an exclusively agricultural community. It maintained a balance between agricultural activities and village industries. Jayaprakash Narayan made the following observation. Gandhi spoke of self-government, self-sufficient village republics. He taught us to visualize the village that does its own policing, settles its own disputes, looks after its sanitation, its education, its industries, and its agriculture. He also spoke of establishing equality in the village society. These very, very important ideas and dreams for village India of Gandhi need to be reconsidered in detail in the light of the agrarian crisis that is confronting the country, in the light of the fact that ecological damage to the countryside and ecological damage in the cities is a reality we are all living with. So in order to have a social and an economic order which is just, which is ecologically harmonious, and which is respectful of the needs of all human beings, the ideas of Gandhi on rural life, on village India, bear a great deal of relevance even in the contemporary times. Thank you.